The music game genre has been getting increasingly crowded since the original Guitar Hero made it explode back in 2005. New iterations have become more and more frequent, so it's up to innovation to make sure these games remain fresh. With this in mind, we now turn to Guitar Hero World Tour. This version of Guitar Hero is the first in this series to bring in other instruments. In addition to the two old friends of guitar and bass, drums and vocals have now been added to the mix, like another certain game that involves rock bands. The song list in World Tour is very diverse and impressive. There's everything from Van Halen to Jimi Hendrix, and even Tool has a themed background that fits in with their recent album artwork and videos. It's all very cool. The core gameplay is still as engaging as it's always been. I prefer the wider timing of the last few Guitar Hero games than what you would find in Rock Band. It's a looser feeling that feels more like playing a real instrument to me. However, Neversoft also provides note transcriptions that aren't quite accurate sometimes. There can be extra notes that shouldn't be there, and some parts are artificially made harder by inserting chords where there should be single notes. If you're a music purist, this might drive you nuts. There are a few new things gameplay-wise. Bass playing now has a new strum line thrown in there where you just strum without actually pressing a fret button, and that works pretty well. Also, the World Tour guitars now have a built-in touchpad that lives under the normal fret buttons. Some parts of the song have a bluish line connecting the notes, which signifies that you can play them with just the touchpad. You don't have to strum. You can also tap the bar to strum, or slide your fingers along the touchpad for a wah-wah effect. Now these are all good ideas, but my experience was that it was sometimes too sensitive for its own good. Sometimes it would register me as tapping when I wasn't, and strumming with it isn't quite as accurate as the real strummer. Also, it's very easy to lose your place on the bar because there's no tactile marker where your fingers go. It's an interesting idea, but it could have been done better. World Tour's band mode is not as robust as Rock Band's is, and it suffers from overall presentation issues. You don't get fans, you don't have a crew, you don't play special gigs or anything like that. To progress, you just play gigs of 2 or more songs, and then once you beat one gig, you move on to another. It's fairly linear in that kind of way, and it's not all that exciting. Now, we're not looking for some sort of epic Final Fantasy-like story here, but come on, you can do something more with this. The presentation issues also affect the gameplay. There's no way to tell when your bandmates are failing unless you look at their portion of the screen, and anyone who plays on Expert knows how feasible that is. This is made worse because if one person fails, everyone does. There's no way to bail someone out. In the same vein, vocals work pretty well except for songs with rapping or screaming. It doesn't do a good job of telling you when you get a word correct, and it confusingly makes it look like you're supposed to sing monotone. On the plus side, the character and instrument customization is pretty good, and set lists are easy to make. Thankfully, you can skip songs if you keep failing out this time around while in quick play with a set list. The other new addition to the series is the music creator, and technically it is a pretty powerful editor. However, it's hard to use with the guitar controller because the UI is pretty convoluted. And while there are lots of effects you can use and things like that, it sounds like there's only one bass sample per note. The end result is that it sounds something only slightly better than a MIDI file, maybe something like ringtone quality. Also, you can't customize the note chart very easily, so the players that download your songs are going to have to play them in the exact same way that you record them, and that isn't always ideal. You also can't add vocals or lyrics, which is kind of mysterious. The music editor was a good idea on paper, but it needs a lot more tweaking to become a defining feature of the franchise. World Tour does add a bunch of new things, but the additions don't quite have the level of polish we're looking for. It's tough to not compare it to Rock Band, but the fact is that Rock Band does exist, and it does a lot of the things that World Tour tries to do but much better. As living rooms increasingly become more crowded with plastic instruments, the Guitar Hero team better figure out how to smooth out the rough edges. Maybe the next play session will be the one we're waiting for. For the full written review, jam over to IGN.com.